Diane Henderson, Vice President of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee and Chair of the Women in Sports Commission. Let me first acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Shamfa Kajo, Minister of Sport and Community Development, Mr. Brian Lewis, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee and Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association. Welcome to all participants. Today we are here for the 4th Annual Women in Leadership Forum, Embracing Change and Transformation During a Pandemic. We are going to hear from each of them shortly, but welcome to all our attending executive members and other panelists. I'm now going to transfer you on to the moderators, Mrs. Giselle Laurent-West and Ms. Nadine Khan, to carry us through the session. I will see you a little later at the end of the session.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Giselle Laurent-West. This is Nadine Khan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us today.
Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, our very first viral session. And what we would like you to do is to make sure that you are participating with us. Make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A and definitely be part of this. What we'll be looking at is challenges that people are facing during this time. We're looking at the coping mechanisms embraced, dealing with the change and the transformation taking place, considering fears that are felt, risks that are being taken, and leadership and productivity and innovation as a whole. So we're going to have a really exciting time this morning.
So like Giselle said, this is our first time doing this virally. So we're very excited about it. We hope everything works in our favor this morning. And we encourage you to participate. What we do want to note is that we ask that you put all of your questions into the Q&A section. Giselle and I will be monitoring the Q&A section offline, and we know that a lot of you are going to be very engaged. So please, that's a segment that's going to be monitored, so make sure you put your questions there. We know some of you submitted questions beforehand, and we're going to try our very best to answer as many of those questions throughout our panel discussions. So we hope you have a wonderful morning with us, and we look forward.
Now, as with everything, we must start with our president. So we would like to now welcome the president of the TTOC, as well as president of the CANOC. Welcome, Mr. Lewis. And we will
good morning, all, good evening and afternoon, because I know that we have a number of participants from other continents and other parts of the world within the Olympic movement. As you would have heard from Giselle and Nadine, this is our first ever entirely virtual Advancing Women in Leadership Forum. It's the 4th one. And when we conceptualized this forum 4 years ago, no one anticipated or even predicted COVID-19, a pandemic that has devastated economies and public health structures. So in a very significant way, this particular Advancing Women in Leadership Forum is the most significant to date because we are into a new normal. It's not going to be the same. There are some things that have changed and have changed forever. We have a very distinguished group of speakers that represent some significant thought leaders and, I dare say, visionaries across the spectrum and age range. We have, as always, the Honorable Minister of Sport and Community Development, Shamfa Kajo, who has been a significant supporter of Future Female and her ministry. They themselves have Pink Rain. But I want to make a couple of quick points that I would like to throw out for the consideration of everyone, the 300 plus participants, our distinguished speakers who will all be introduced. So it's not that I have forgotten my protocol, it is just that I don't want to tip and steal the thunder of the moderator, because it's going to be an awesome forum today with some awesome speakers. But there are a couple of quick points in closing. When we talk about gender equality and the future is female and advancing women, in the context of COVID-19, we must recognize this. COVID-19 has a significant potential to be gender regressive, meaning because of the systemic and structural inequalities that were already there. The gains and transformation and advances that have been made face a very real possibility of being turned over and rolled. Sport and sports cannot and will not and don't operate in a vacuum. Sport reflects society. An important point that runs the risk, the very real risk of COVID-19 stealing a generation of athletes, a generation of coaches, and a generation of sports administrators if we aren't careful and if we don't pay attention to it across not just the Caribbean, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but the entire Pan Am and Americas area and across the globe in the Olympic movement. And what is that? You do any research, you will note that the burden of unpaid care falls proportionately, significantly on women. All the deaths that they have had globally because of COVID-19, all the people who have been infected, the jury is still out as it relates to what is the long-term impact of COVID. And it is in that regard that the burden of what is called unpaid care will fall significantly more on women. And what is the impact of that? Sport and participation in sports will no longer be a priority. I welcome you. I thank you for taking time to be involved in this very important conversation and discussion. And I now hand over because we want to stay on the program. So I will not, I've been known for going on a bit too long. So I hope I've made the point and I've gotten a little kick on my shin. So I'm taking the cue. So thank you very much. And I look forward to an awesome day of conversations and discussions and sharing of ideas about how we embracing change and transformation during a pandemic.
So it is our great, thank you, Mr. Lewis.
You're welcome.
And I think he's lucky we didn't have the Academy Awards music because we might press play and start to drown him out a little bit. But it is our great pleasure this morning to have with us the Honorable Shamfa Cudjoe, the Minister of Sports and Community Development, who has really in her own right been a pioneer for Future is Female. She's been a supporter of the program for the last couple of years, and we are very glad to have her this morning to bring some greetings and to bring some words. The Honorable Shamfa Cudjoe.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Mr. Brian Lewis, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, Ms. Jamina Saldana, Vice President of the Mexican Olympic Committee, Dr. Sophia Mohammed, CEO of CISU Global Wellness, Ms. Stacey Ann King, West Indies female cricketer, Ms. Melissa Pascal, CEO of Pascal's Bakery Limited, Ms. Priyanka Dani, National Archer Athlete, Senator Laura Lizama Leasing, consultant, moderators, Ms. Giselle Laurent West of the TTOC, and Ms. Nadine Khan Simangal, also of TTOC, online viewers, members of the media, a hearty good morning. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be invited to bring you greetings at this Women in Leadership Symposium hosted by the Trinidad and Tobago Olympics Committee. I want to especially thank Mr. Brian Lewis for championing the cause for inclusivity and fair play in sport, and for continuing to be a voice of reason, a strong tower, and the guiding light in the advancement of sport in the Americas. Today, I'm both humbled and delighted by this opportunity to share the platform with some of the most beautiful and brilliant women in the country, all leaders in their own right, and just what we need to set good examples and inspire positive change for all young women and all people by extension. Earlier this week, I joined my sorority sisters of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated in bidding farewell and honoring the legacy of the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, former Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Justice Ginsburg was famous for using her voice to champion gender equality, civil liberties, and paying equity. She was a feminist, an extraordinary woman and a warrior indeed. I'm reminded of her very profound words. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. What resonates the most for me in this statement are the words women belong. These words carry with them certainty. These words speak to confidence. These words legitimize the significance of our role and certainly speaks to our right to be present, our right to influence decision, our right to be active agents of change anywhere decisions are being made, in our homes, in our communities, in the judiciary, in politics, and last but not least, in sport. But just like in anything, with rights come responsibility. The responsibility to fully maximize each opportunity. The responsibility to not simply be present, but to be productive, to be relevant, and to make your mark. The responsibility to make room for other women and to leave the door open so that other women can join. The responsibility to chart a new way, to blaze a new trail. My mother always says, sometimes we have to rock the boat a little, and if necessary, rock it a lot. But be careful not to cant it over, or else you could easily throw out the baby with the bath water. That's all people talk, but you know exactly what I mean. We have to challenge the status quo. We have to change the culture. We have to make women in leadership normal. We have to make women in leadership a distinctive feature of the new normal. It is in this light that I am so excited about participating in today's forum, which provides a platform for us, leaders and influencers in the industry, to make our mark, to make our contribution to the advancement of sport, truly re-engineering the industry in a time of uncertainty, which also happens to be a time of countless opportunities. Again, I say, I am excited. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought nations to their knees. All activities have been brought almost to a screeching halt. Sports is no different. Social distancing and established health protocols have disrupted sporting calendars in every discipline all over the world. But this disruption in our ability to go out and play has created an opportunity for us to examine and improve the rules of play. Rather than fixate on what we can't do, let us focus on what we could and should do. We can now place keen attention on all areas of sport that we had been too busy or too distracted to pursue. It is in this light that I commend the TTOC President, Mr. Brian Lewis, and the Sport Integrity Global Alliance for the work that they are doing on promoting diversity and inclusion in sport, tackling issues of race, opportunities for the differently able, and for women to get to the board level. With borders now closed and international sport activities at an all-time low, or should I say an all-time low, we can place more focus on home, maximizing the full potential of sport to fight crime, to unite people, and to rebuild our community. We must utilize sport as a tool to improve the standard of living for athletes, delivering training programs to help athletes with basic life skills, time management, money management, career planning, marketing, communication, and how to deal with the media. We must use this opportunity to assist and advance the business side of sport, assist in administration, strategic planning, succession planning, accounting, proposal writing, comprehensive capacity building for both national sporting organizations and community groups. We must take this opportunity to promote and expand total participation in sport, bring in the disabled, the women, the seniors, and those in the rural communities. We must take this opportunity to improve infrastructure, providing access to proper facilities for the rural communities, and developing our existing facilities to meet international standards so that we can host regional and international games. We must spend time on research and development as it relates to sport, seeing sport as a science. It is not about recreation only, and success doesn't happen by guess. Sport is the type of science where exactly what you put in is what you get out of it. We must use this opportunity to use sport as a means of expanding and transforming our economy. We, Trinidad and Tobago, would have hosted the CPL this year successfully against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. This helped to generate much needed economic activity when the vendors needed it most. And we are well set to host the Commonwealth Youth Games in 2023, and we will do so successfully also. All these considerations must form an integral part of planning the way forward as we take advantage of this once in a lifetime opportunity to create the new normal. We at the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, we remain committed to rolling up our sleeves and getting the job done. We are indeed happy to have the TTOC on board and to have access to their wide network of technical resources and stakeholders. One goal, one mission. We are stronger together and we'll come out of this pandemic better and brighter than ever. I want to thank the TTOC for inviting me to participate in this wonderful exercise. I wish you a productive and enjoyable symposium. May God bless the TTOC. May God bless the entire sporting fraternity. And may God richly bless our nation. I thank you.
We thank the Minister for her absolute powerful and inspiring words this early morning. I think for me personally, the strongest takeaway from what she said to us is women belong. And I think in each and every one of us, we need to feel like we belong. We belong in everything. We belong in sport. We belong in leadership. We belong in business. And I think just if you had to take away just one statement from the minister's remarks, it's that women belong. I'm now going to turn it over to Giselle, and Giselle is going to introduce our keynote speaker this morning.
So our keynote speaker today is Dr. Sophia Mohammed. She's the CEO of SISU Global Wellness. Dr. Mohammed brings her dynamism to this panel as she pioneers a wellness revolution in Trinidad and Tobago, and she's well known for doing that. She holds several portfolios: Chair of Gender Advocacy Advisory Board, Institute of Gender and Development Studies of UWI. She's a facilitator of United Nations Women Foundation's program, Strengthening Prevention, Approaches to Address Gender Balanced Violence and Gender-Based Violence in the Caribbean. She's the Architect for Change of Habitat for Humanity. She's a council member of the Medical Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And she shares with us that her ability to achieve extraordinary results and balance the multiple roles that she has to take care of is by doing her daily practice of yoga and mindfulness. And of course, with the adventurous 7-year-old she has, that is very hard to do sometimes. She highlights one of her defining moments in her career as being assigned physician to the Nobel Peace Prize winner of 2014, Malala Yousafzai, on her visit to Trinidad and Tobago, reminding all of us the power of one's voice. And so she is very, very important to us in this discussion because she talks about women, she talks about defining voice. She knows how important it is for us moving forward as women. So let's welcome Dr. Sophia.
Good morning, everyone. A special welcome to our Honorable Shamfa Cudjoe, Minister of Sport and Community Development, and President of Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, Brian Lewis, and our phenomenal moderators here, Nadine Khan and Giselle Aron. Thank you so much for that introduction. And of course, a very dynamic panelists for this entire webinar. This is the 4th Women in Advance in Leadership TTOC conference, and it's the first virtual, and it is my distinguished honor to be part of it and to be here with you to share these words. Of course, a special, very special welcome to our media and to all of the attendees. Today is a phenomenal day. Today is a defining day. Today is a day where we are going to catalyze change, because I'm certain every single one of our speakers is going to tap into their experiences, how they have embraced change in their life, how they have embraced transformation, and more so, how they are being resilient. Today's particular conversation is going to be on resilience through a crisis. How can we, all of the women and men who have joined in here, tap into our innate resilience? Now, I want to ask you, if you had a superpower, what would you want that to be? Our Honorable Shamfa Cudjoe started off this speech with a very powerful message from a mentor of my own, and of course, most women across the world, that women belong in all places. And of course, it was echoed by Nadine Khan, those words, women belong. And that indeed is one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's superpowers, her fearlessness. I want to ask you, Does this particular image looks familiar? I specifically put in some males in here because while I know this is women advancing in leadership, our advancing also is directly related to the men and the families, the environment, the ecosystem that surrounds us. I'm sure anyone who's looking at this screen thinks this is indeed a familiar background. It's one for myself as well, as I try to manage the many roles that you all heard there. The most important one I would say is the mummy role and how I'm managing that, plus being a medical doctor and of course the other administrative roles. So here's what we know that are certainties. That the overall severity of this pandemic and the pattern of the disease progression, we are certain that this is going to last for a long time. We are certain that in the level of collaboration between the countries, we will find solutions. We are certain that the healthcare system is responding to our crises. We are certain, unfortunately, of the devastating economic impact, the consequences of this crisis. However, the positive is we have seen that the level of social cohesion we've seen in response to this crisis has brought us significant transformational change. And from a medical perspective, and we brought it up initially in our pre-conversation, here's another thing we're very certain of. We're certain that every single one of us now is feeling stressed. Our mental health, our emotional dysregulation is tapped into and maxed out. We have no other choice but to be able to expand our bandwidth. And that's why I wanted to bring to you a little bit of Medicine 101. What is stress? The emotional and physical response you experience when you perceive an imbalance between the demands placed on you and your resources and coping skills to deliver optimally. So it's that demand, that imbalance between the demand on you and your coping skills. And that's why this particular webinar and conferences like this is so crucial to empowering, to advancing our women, to advancing the communities that our women support. I'm not going to go into this one in detail, but yes, stress affects every single part of our body. Often, however, it's reported that 88% of all medical practitioners ask the question, are you feeling stressed? Almost down to the end of the questionnaire. I think it needs to be reversed because probably it is the number one reason for most of our detriments right now. So I'll return to that question. If you had a superpower, what would you want it to be? And I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we continue here. When this conversation was introduced, you all were told I'm CEO of a company called SISU, SISU, Global Wellness. I want to bring you to your attention what the word SISU means. It is that extraordinary determination, that courage and resoluteness in the face of extreme adversity. It is that action mindset, is a resilience mindset, which enables individuals to see beyond their present limitations. It is actually an integral element of the Finnish culture and a universal capacity which we all possess within us. Now, more than ever, we need to tap into our inner Sisu. So I want to bring your attention to the superpower of Sisu that we all possess within. This company was formed 3 years ago, and it almost as if I anticipated that we would need resilience training. 3 years ago, when I was doing training at the United Nations of Institute in Training and Research, I chose one of my leadership courses to be critical thinking and resilience. However, I realized that I learned a lot of that resilience from this little superpower here, my son. And in our introduction, someone mentioned hope. He who plants a tree plants hope. I want us to continue to plant seeds of hope and know that even the smallest action can change the world, even the smallest thought. This little superpower here is now 8 years old. He's going to turn 9 just now. And unfortunately, by medical terms, he has been diagnosed with a disorder. However, I choose to focus on his extraordinary abilities. And he is one who has shown me his resilience. I love living in his world. And I know many of our listeners here, many of those who are attending, all may be struggling with different abilities or extraordinary abilities with our children, with ourselves that we have to overcome. In those moments of trying to figure out how we overcoming it, let's look back at what we have already succeeded and overcome. And of course, hold on to that hope. The other person that has shared a lot or taught me a lot of resilience is this particular woman here, Malala Yousafzai, the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner. Some of you may be familiar. She visited here in Trinidad a few years ago. And she's a young woman who fought for education of women in Pakistan. She fought so relentlessly for it that she was shot in the head by the Taliban and then in an ICU. When she visited here in Trinidad, it was my distinct honor to spend an entire week with her and to be able to share and hear her stories of resilience and why she continues to fight and advocate for women's rights, empowering us all to listen, to tune into our voice. These are just a few other pictures of what brings me my resilience. Some may tap into their yoga. Some may tap into the strengths of their past and the stories that they've overcome. I do miss all the excursions, all the things that I would have done outwardly, the outreaches that we did with, say, Habitat or the Medical Association. But we will soon return to our new reality and find ways to adapt through it. Through medical school, through a lot of different academic facilities, we've all been taught about IQ and EQ. But I want to bring your attention quickly to a new intelligence, that one that I want us to empower each one of ourselves and our communities with. The power of AQ. What's that, you may have said? You may not have known or heard about AQ. It is that adaptability, the process of adapting, of persevering, especially through this crisis. And as I shared with Sisu, we all have it within us to emerge from this adversity, from these tragedies, from this trauma, without losing hope. Or, as my son likes to say, he just likes to be Tigger. How do we bounce back? So how do we build resilience? I just want to draw your attention to the 3 questions. I want to ask you, are you a person that sees a stressor as a change, as negative, as an insurmountable problem, or as a challenging situation that requires a new way of thinking or being? Do you focus on the problem or do you focus on the solution? Do you let fear make your choices? So when you ponder on those questions, you'll realize where you fall in your adaptability coefficient and where you may need to fill your gaps. This is a quick little matrix that can help you decide where you are with your adaptability coefficient and where you may need to work on. This COVID-19 makes us feel like if we're trapped in a matrix, being at home. Some of us are so restricted we're unable to move about because if we have unwell parents or unwell spouses. These 4 points of developing your own personal resilience, your coping strategies, your grit, your emotional intelligence, your ability to determine logically from the past, making life as meaningful and holding on to that sense of purpose. Giselle mentioned the word there, mindfulness and yoga. It is one of the most powerful things you can add to your armory of coping skills. I want you all who are listening and tuned in here, anytime you feel stressed, to mention these words. I will breathe. I will think of solutions. I will not let my worry control me. I will not let my stress level break me. I will simply breathe, and it will be okay, because I do not quit. And more than ever, in a time of COVID-19 where it affects our respiratory abilities, we are seeing that importance. Yes, we know the importance of our breath, but it comes to the fruition, it comes to the forward thinking of us, how important our breath is, something we often take for granted. So I bring you back as I close. What is that superpower? Tap into that superpower. If you had a superpower, what would you want it to be? I leave you with these 2. Would you want it to be fear, or would you want it to be resilience? We have to begin to do what is unusual. Even in the midst of this crisis, when everyone is feeling lack and poverty, we have to do the unusual, to love when everyone is angry and judging others, to demonstrate courage and peace when everyone is in fear, to show kindness when others are displaying hostility and aggression, and to surrender to the possibility when the rest of the world is aggressively pushing to be the first, trying to control outcomes and fiercely competing in an endless drive to get to the top, to knowingly smile in the face of adversity and to cultivate the feeling of wholeness, even if we are diagnosed as sick. I leave you with this thought. And of course, I know that every one of us may be also having a health challenge. So for every single one of those who are attending here, this is a special that my clinic decide to offer to every one of the attendee. On your very next consultation, I am there, the Care Clinic and Medical Center. Jump onto their Facebook page. You will see the flyer for the TTOC webinar. Just jump on and said you attended here, put a message about this presentation, and that entitles you to your next consultation. For those who wish to get in contact with me, it's sisuglobalwellness@gmail.com. I am ever so grateful for this opportunity to share with all of the attendees here in this conference, encouraging every single one of you all to create your resilience, to be the person who shapes your destiny, and to transform your life purposefully and intentionally. I thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed. Inspirational words. I think they were phenomenal. What is your superpower?
Well, Dr. Mohammed said, if you had a superpower, what would you want it to be? Because I think personally, I have several superpowers already. But if I had to pick one, I would think that I would want the superpower of being able to be in different places at the same time. Being a mother of 3 boys and working full-time and serving on the TTOC and serving in basketball and serving all over, I think I would want it to be able to be in several places at the same time. So I could be working and be at home cooking. So I didn't have to work and then come home and cook. I wish they could be done
momentarily. And I mean, it's difficult at this time as well during the pandemic. But I think a few things that we need to take away from Dr. Mohammed, definitely we need to know and understand about SISU and learn a little bit more. So perhaps if you can read up about that, because we're talking about grit, we're talking about bravery, we're talking about resilience, and the ability to harness all of them and give that into your own personal being able to project that in your everyday life. Certainly the resilience, and of course the adaptability during this time of the pandemic, the ability to adapt, the AQ, as she says. So let's look at that a little. We need to really look up on SISU a little bit more. But Dr. Mohammed, before you leave us, I have a few questions. And feel free, anybody, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A for us so that we can actually ask the panelists, ask the keynote speaker right now.
I was just about to say, Giselle, that Giselle and I are looking at the screen, and I would think that after such an invigorating presentation that we would have seen the Q&A section lighting up. I guess it was so relatable that everybody understood and nobody has any questions, because we're not seeing any questions in the Q&A section. But feel free, put your questions in there and we'll have them. We'll try to have them answered as much as possible within our time constraints.
But what I would like to ask you, Dr. Mohammed, one quick question. What are some challenges that you have faced with SISU and the currency in particular during this pandemic, if you don't mind answering that?
Certainly. So some of the challenges, I can provide that either personally or from the company itself, right? SISU Global Wellness is a training company, and we've now had to adapt very quickly into the virtual world. My son, like I shared, is autistic, and I've had to help him adapt into the virtual world. And anyone who's familiar with autistics know they do not like the thing called change. They like structure. They like things as it is. And every single day is a completely different day. So now more more than ever, the role of women is stretched. We now really have to tap into our superpowers because we're balancing all of those roles, plus, of course, maintaining our sanity behind it. I think we have been deprioritizing our wellness. And if I can leave anyone with a message here today, is to prioritize your well-being and your wellness to just maintain during this pandemic.
Thank you very much. And I hope everybody takes heed.
Well, I know that during this pandemic, I've been taking much more vitamins than I've ever taken in my life. I'm taking letters of vitamins that I never even knew existed, C's and D's and B's and zincs and turmeric and things that I never even knew existed. So I think personally, my wellness has gone from it's increased tremendously, just your knowledge base of things that have been around you for a very long time that you never paid attention to. For example, turmeric, something that we all know about growing up in an East Indian family, may have been growing in our yard, and we never knew the extreme benefits of something like turmeric. So I think just your knowledge base on things that attribute to your wellness has grown so tremendously in this pandemic. Giselle, I'll turn back over to you to see if there are any more of the questions there. And I see coming some questions on our Q&A.
Right, so I'll actually read one of the questions from the Q&A. It says, Dr. Mohammed, thank you for a lot of this amazing presentation. Do you think if the restrictions during the pandemic were not that strict, would the level of stress and depressions be less?
So that's a very interesting question. Thank you so much for asking it, Elvira. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, these restrictions are necessary at this time because SARS-CoV-2, this particular virus, is unfortunately so contagious. So we need to balance. We have to find that happy medium with maintaining those restrictions. They're very new. And anytime there's behavior change and something going out of our typical comfort zone, there would be this increased stress. And this is why things like this, webinars like this, we have to find coping strategies. One of my girlfriends, we decided for her birthday, because we couldn't do this, we did a Zoom party as her birthday. We were most upset that that's what we had to do, and most depressed because we like to dress up and go out, but we've had to adapt. Another things you can do is, as Nadine shared, she learned all of a sudden about different health benefits of different medications, different herbs, different natural things. There's that beauty in gardening. There's that beauty in eating healthy. There's that beauty in finding ways to exercise with your family, even if you're at home. So if the restrictions are less, I can't necessarily say the depression or the stress would be less, because then we are more at risk of spreading COVID-19. I think it's more for us to focus on finding solutions to cope with this new reality. A lot of persons use the word new norm, and I love the new norm, but here's the thing, nothing is normal about this normal. So it's a new reality. So we have to find coping strategies to deal with the stress, embrace it, accept it, acknowledge it in every single one, including myself, believe me. That's why I enjoy my moments with my girlfriends, with my colleagues. I have a mindful moment, a gratitude moment every single morning. So let's find ways to cope and reduce our stress.
Wonderful, wonderful. Definitely. I mean, it's very important for us to remember to decrease our stress. And I was speaking to somebody recently, and they were saying that, I was just stuck in a doldrum and doing one specific thing all my life. And in the pandemic, yes, with this change, I have been able to discover that I have new skills. And I think that's one of the things that we have to also bear in mind, that even though we're in this pandemic and there is change, we need to transform ourselves. We need to transform the way we look at things, the opportunities that we may have that we never thought that we were exposed to. So those are some of the things that we have to start thinking about as well in this new normal. So Dr. Mohammed, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time with us, your words of wisdom. I'm sure many people will be coming to CISU and definitely looking for advice and for medical advice, as well as encouragement and everything that a woman
basic health and wellness.
Health and wellness. I'm leaving the email and the contact number in the chat. So for anyone, and then yes, I'm seeing some persons asking they want the presentation. We'll let TTOC share it through to all the attendees.
I was just about to answer it in a general way.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for being
Thank
here.
you so much, everyone. And know that we are really all in this together.
So again, thank you. So this morning now, we're going to move on to our first panel. And the topic out of the first panel is leveraging your power, being fearless and innovative in this time. So I think Dr. Mohammed's intro speech and keynote speech was so excellently placed that it's led us beautifully into this segment, because when Dr. Mohammed spoke about Sisu, I instantly went on my phone and Googled it, and I see that it's a Finnish concept that talks about stoic determination, spirit, bravery, resilience, and then she spoke about her superpowers. So I think that the keynote speech has led us perfectly into this panel one topic, this discussion, and we have on our panel for the first discussion, we have Miss Melissa Pascal, who is the CEO of Pascal's Bakery Limited, a second-generation family enterprise, one of the largest private labeling baking companies in Trinidad and Tobago. We also have on our panel Stacey Ann King, cricketer, West Indies female cricketer, 2016 ICC World T20 champion, Trinidad and Tobago Cricketer of the Year awardee, sports broadcasting on ESPN Caribbean, and she has an arts and science of coaching from the University of the West Indies. And we also have on our panel Priyanka Dani. Priyanka is a former national athlete of Team TTO, who is the highest ranked female compound archer in the Southern Caribbean during her 5 years of competing. So I think Priyanka will do very well in the Hunger Games. She graduated from the University of West Indies, Cave Hill, with a bachelor's in sports science with concentration in exercise science and coaching, competing with first-class honors. She's also a level 2 archery coach under the USA Archery. Priyanka has recently started her own business as a health and wellness coach. She's recently launched her brand, PD Aesthetics, which focuses on various aspects of health and sports. Her focus is on psychological skills development in sports, and she also has a passion for helping individuals with mental health conditions. Through her studies and passion for psychology, she wants to help athletes manage emotions, challenge negative thinking patterns, improve relationship skills, and reduce stress and anxiety, which was also discussed by Dr. Mohammed. Thank you, ladies, and welcome to the panel, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Yes, good morning. Wow, we have had some riveting conversation so far. We've just been making notes. Dr. Mohammed, the Honorable Minister, what Dr. Mohammed said about what you focus on grows. That is a fact. I recently had a daughter, she's 5 months old. She was born in the midst of the pandemic, April 3rd. And the business as well, because I am the CEO of Pascal's Bakery, was faced with some serious problems. We could never plan because the Prime Minister would come on and basically the plan made yesterday was changed at the midday conference. And I was there sitting at home with a 5-day-old baby and having to make some serious decisions. And you know what? What you focus on grows. At the end of the day, when you focus on growth, when you accept, embrace exactly where you are, regardless of what you're facing, regardless with a baby in your arm, anything is possible. And it's possible as well because of support. I do have very strong support from my family, from my husband, from my mother, from my brothers. So don't see it's only a mindset, what you focus on, but you must have the support to get through something that is as challenging as this pandemic.
So I think now we can turn over to Stacey Ann King, just to give us a few words on her background.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So for me, I grew up in sports. So my mom and my sisters all played cricket while I was growing up. Unfortunately, I didn't play cricket alone. I played football as well. So I represented Trinidad in national women's football as well. It was quite challenging coming from a rural area of Sandy Grande, where you had to do something different. But again, skill batting, bowling, and fielding, it drew crowds and it drew supporters. So that in itself, it started to not be a male-dominated sport anymore. Supporters would come out to have a look at the women play, to look at girls play. And I think all of that would have helped, develop a pathway in Sandy Grande for young girls to make their stand in sport. I like the comment from the Honorable Minister that women belong, challenge the status quo. In particularly, I would draw reference to the Women's World Cup in Australia earlier this year, the Women's T20 final, where Australia and India played to an 86,174 million crowd at the MCG. I think that in itself shows that women are leveraging the power of sport in cricket, and definitely, it needs to grow, and especially in the Caribbean, we need to get a bit more, happening in pathways for young girls and women in sport. I have personally been training with a couple of my friends online. We've been doing, they're from Guyana, Barbados. We've been doing virtual sessions, just trying to help motivate each other, because it just becomes kind of, despondent about training and why am I doing this when there's nothing happening in my sport, so it has been motivating to have them on board, and we chat to each other and motivate each other to get through sessions on a daily basis. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Stacey. And it must be very interesting knowing that you've just performed for an audience of 86,000, and then you're now stuck in a pandemic
and don't know when you're going to be performing again. We now turn over to Priyanka, who is going to just share with us a little bit about herself and give us a few words.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So just a little bit about my background. I wasn't always involved in sports. Growing up, I tried to get involved in different extracurricular activities. Nothing really felt like where I fit in until I started archery. And, starting a sport like archery, something that's not as popular, not as common, especially in the Caribbean, it made me realize a lot of the importance of being prepared as an athlete. And, my sport taught me a lot about mental health, which is what kind of guided me into the career path that I am on now. And through that, I want to share a little bit about what my business is and what my brand is around. And I'd like to start by sharing a question. How can I make this situation more effective so that I'm able to survive in this new world with the resources I still have left, right? So why did I choose to launch my brand at the beginning of the pandemic? Because I started my work in March, which is when Trinidad and Tobago kind of now went under lockdown with all the COVID-19 restrictions. And it's because I think that this is something that we need now more than ever. Just as Dr. Mohammed said, this pandemic is seriously affecting our mental well-being. Practicing mindfulness by itself, that alone has such tremendous benefits on our mental health, our mental state. And, aside from my business being around health and wellness, it also focuses on athletes. And when you look at how COVID-19 has affected sports, just as Stacey said, when you look at athletes all around the world, it's not just the practicing and the competing that is being affected, but it's also their mental state. When I've read so many articles about how athletes have been commenting on their mental well-being affected by not being able to practice, not being able to train with their teammates as they would like to, and having to be in isolation for 2 weeks before any game that they need to participate in. So, I share a lot of the sentiments with Dr. Mohammed, especially in the importance of well-being, of wellness. And secondly, the other point I would like to touch on is part of embracing change is sharing your knowledge with others. So there's an unspeakable fulfillment in knowing that someone that you share your knowledge with can use it to make their own situation better, right? And that's why I strongly believe that sharing knowledge is so important, sharing the knowledge that I acquire in my journey from my undergrad being in sports science to now pursuing my master's in kinesiology. And I think that it's very important that a webinar like this, sharing our knowledge with one another and our experiences so that we can help other women not just uplift themselves, but also pass that on to others is very important.
Great. Thank you so much, Priyanka. We appreciate that. You seem to have done quite a lot in your young, tender years so far. We would just have to ask a few questions of the panel specific to the leveraging your power, being fearless and innovative. So I know that none of you have really touched on it fully, so there may be a few questions of the people in the audience may want to ask. So please send it in the Q&A.
It seems to be a very quiet audience this morning. Did we have breakfast? Did we go to Pascal's Bakery for breakfast this morning? Because we seem to be very quiet. We keep, and if you all see me keep glancing over, it's because I keep glancing over the Q&A, hoping that it's going to be lighting up and running down. Because I'm thinking that with these empowering women, we should be glad to have this opportunity to have so many questions to ask them. So I'll just take the first one, and this is to Melissa Pascal from Pascal's Bakery, and it's did you have to come up with creative and innovative concepts in order to manage your business during COVID? I know we may have a lot of small business owners on, and you might be able to share things that you have had to adjust in your business to make sure that it survived the time that might be helpful to some of the attendees.
You know, certainly, without a doubt, at the end of the day, it's all about mindset. You constantly need to have a mindset that you're just willing to deal with being uncomfortable. Once you could just come to terms with being uncomfortable, and then once you get accustomed to that feeling, then you will be able to then see some clarity, assess your playing field, assess your external factors, because that is critical, especially now when things are so volatile. The change is constant and it's beyond rapid. It's faster than anything you've ever experienced, at least I've ever experienced. And you know what? It forces you to become extremely sharp. So it's absolutely critical that we understand that we need to be sharpening our minds, our emotions, our spiritual aspects every single day. Because without that sharpening, we become dull so quickly. And when you become dull, innovation and creativity and that growth mindset is difficult for you to actually respond, create, and lead, because that's critically important. And you know what? Now I find myself investing more in my mental. I listen to the Archbishop, Jason Gordon, at least 2-3 times a week as well, for my spiritual, that's God of my understanding. So I really focus on mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, and physical. I'm a former national hockey player as well. You know, I've ran some triathlons. I ran when I was 6 months pregnant with my mother in Disney. So, you know, it's really finding that balance, especially now. You know, I pick up the telephone and I call, I do 30-day challenges with my friends, meaning we read a chapter of certain books over and over for our mindset on gratitude. We speak about our goals every single day. And when you are that focused as an individual, then you can lead your company. You can't lead when you're not clear, when you don't have defined goals. You know, I have a question for the audience. Have you taken the time to define your personal goals, your business goals? And if not, start today. Pick up the pen right now and write down your goals. What are your goals? And be specific. Put strong deadlines on it and get yourself an accountability coach, get yourself an accountability partner, and stick to it.
Great. Thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense for many of us, and I'm sure many people could attest to that. You need to be able to focus. I think focus is one of the key things. Let me ask you another question. As facilitator of the youth business for Trinidad and Tobago, how are you leveraging your power to encourage the youth to continue to persevere during this specific time?
Well, I do this super simple. One of my little things that I do is something called talks on the move. This is when I'm walking my daughter in the stroller. I'm out of breath. I'm sweaty. It's not pretty. But you know what? I do a snippet. And of all the work that I'm doing personally, because I have to grow daily in order to, as I said, I keep on saying this, to keep myself sharp. I share my readings, I share my thoughts. I have talks in the move on all my social media, as well as, you know, I really believe 1000% in giving back. Not only giving back, that's a part of my DNA in terms of what I do internally in my organization. You know, focusing a lot on leadership and really communicating with Pascal's staff as well, to really ensure that my staff is in a mental state that they can lead their families. Because we hire a lot of women, a lot of underprivileged women, you know, and it's critically important. It's critically important to keep your staff in the right mindset. And as well as I've worked alongside Shell and really focusing on entrepreneurship in youth. And I wasn't able to work on that as much because of my pregnancy and so forth, but I am so open I go back to my school, Holy Name Convent, my alma mater, which I love so much, so any opportunity at all, I'm there, 1000% hands down.
Well, thank you for that, Melissa, and thank you for your open and honest answers to our questions. It gives great insights into your life and the challenges that you face. And we thank all the panelists today for, being open and sharing not just what good is coming, but what challenges they are facing, because that's a way of empowering others to share what your challenges are. So the next question I have is actually for Stacey Ann King, and share a little bit with us about how you were able to be creative in your training methods during the pandemic, and what advice you may have for young cricketers who just think, okay, cricket has stopped, I can't train, team sports are on a lockdown, and what different things that they may be able to do so they can keep training.
Well, personally for me, I've been able to have my own space to train. So I have a small home gym that during the pandemic, it really hasn't bothered me a lot. I mean, it bothered me just to not be able to get outdoors and run, or have most of my teammates there to train with. But I've been able to, motivate myself, because I'm very self-motivated, and I think that's really important as an athlete. To get up and still maintain your routine and your training program. I've done a lot of it with 2 players who don't even live in Trinidad, and I've tried to do it a lot with my club team, Technocrats. I have, women's cricket has also been put on pause locally here, and you're accustomed being outdoors on a weekend playing cricket, and now there's absolutely nothing, especially for the young under 19 players who, they're accustomed being outdoors. They're not accustomed just being indoors and not doing stuff. And it became tough. I started as the captain of my team. I started having little charades, having Zoom chats with them and WhatsApp chats where we play games, we do charades, we do last man standing fitness sessions, just to keep them involved and keep motivated, because, I mean, it's, as was said earlier, this pandemic isn't going anywhere. So we have to try to adapt as much as possible and to motivate others, because we are not sure what mental state they are in. I am self-motivated, but not very many other athletes may be, especially young ones coming up. So I think it's really important that, I can stand up there and say, guys, let's do this. Let's come on board. Let's come on Zoom at a certain time, and we're going to have punch for years, or something just to make it interesting, to keep them and to also let them know that we care, as the technical staff, we care, and we support them through this pandemic.
Right, great, thank you. We do have a question actually coming from Rahima from our Q&A to you, Ms. King, and what she's saying is, what advice would you give to improving mental health for the young cricketers around you, those who you've trained with, maybe advice that you would give them personally, and do you feel that you have the power to do that?
Yes, I feel that I have the power to do so. I mean, I have a wealth of experience playing for West Indies women. I've also done courses as well. I think that as young athletes right now, they really need our motivation. They need us as adults to, share our experiences. Sometimes, it's not always going to be positive. It's not always going to be what they want to hear. But during this pandemic time, reach out to somebody. I have like 3 young players under me right now that I check in on every other day, give them try to, just tap their brains a little bit, just to see where they are at and keep them motivated. So I wouldn't say it's tough, but during this time as an adult and as an experienced athlete, I think it's necessary, not just for me, but for other athletes as well, to check in on those younger players.
Great, that's really good to know, because it's important for us as adults to be able to look out for those.
It's important for all of us in this pandemic, in a time when social interaction is non-existent. It's important on a social basis for us to reach out to one another, keep in touch, make sure how are you doing, on a regular basis. So it's important as athletes to reach out to other athletes and, see how their training is going, encourage them, even the younger ones, because it's a very difficult phase in society if you are a young athlete who just started training, who just started coming through the ranks, and then to have this completely disrupt whatever you were now building. If you were just peaking, it's a difficult time, and mentally, it can cause a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety for what the future holds for them, because we don't know how long this will go on. So it's important that senior athletes, reach out to the younger athletes and be very encouraging at this time. And I think that's what the question was asking, kind of.
Correct.
So I think we have a question for Priyanka, and it talks about your business venture, and what made you decide at this point in time to launch this business venture and leverage your power as an influential athlete to do so, especially now at this time?
My business being around health and wellness and, helping not just individuals, but like I said, with a focus on sports and athletes, manage their wellness and their mental health specifically. What kind of inspired this venture was my time as an athlete, because everyone involved in the sport of archery would tell you that archery is a sport that's 90% mental and 10% physical, right? There's a lot of focus, there's a lot of concentration that's needed to perform well in a sport like this. And it was only when in my years of competing, that I started to realize how little focus is placed on sports psychology, on mental training. And now, like since then, I've seen that there's a lot more work being done, a lot more research coming out on it, and it's really great to see. And this is something that I've wanted to do since I've been competing, and why I chose to do it now. Aside from there being an extra availability of time to do something like this, was because I saw that, people don't like to be isolated. As human beings, we are very social. We love to be around our friends and family. We love to interact with people. And when you look at some of the research out there on depression and anxiety, a lot of it is now there are higher percentages of depression and anxiety, not just for athletes, but individuals across the board, because of the isolation that they are in, because they can't function as what we would consider normal. As simple as, taking a walk on the beach. Now, well, here in Trinidad, we can't go to the beach as we want to. We can't socialize in a way that we are accustomed to doing. And especially in Trinidad, we're very social creatures. We're very social people. And when all this started, I looked at it as a great opportunity for me to launch my brand, because it's a way for me to help people manage their mental health and reach out. And how I was able to leverage my power from being a national athlete was because of the networking that I established during that time and the following that I had. I chose to use that to encourage people to reach out, encourage people to help one another. And, as Melissa said, it's just a big part of it is mindset. A big part of it is, keeping that focus and keeping that positivity and being able to share that knowledge with other people who need it. Another thing about my business is it's completely online. So the restrictions of COVID doesn't really affect the reach or the interaction that I have with my clients, because it's all done it's completely virtual. So, that's another benefit that I have in terms of being able to adapt well and quickly. And that's something that I would recommend to other small businesses and athletes as well. Being able to adapt and adjust to the situation quickly and in a positive way really does work to the advantage.
That's correct, Priyanka. And we actually have a question from somebody here saying, how do you recharge and re-energize, regain that optimum level of performance and keep it going during this time and and beyond generally?
That's a great question, because that is something that a lot of people don't do, or they don't know how to do. From my time as when there was a point in time when I was competing that I was studying full time, and I was also working for a short period of time too. And doing all those things, it can really overwhelm you. We don't just need COVID to feel that. And I think a very important thing to note is know when you need a break. Listen to your body. body, listen to your mind, know when you just need to take some time off and do something that relaxes you, do something that you enjoy, because it really helps to recharge your mind. And you know, rest is really important. I think people underestimate the importance of rest and relaxation. Being able to take that break and listen to your body and know when you need to stop for a little while, because some people think if you stop, you may not be able to, you may lose out, or you may, you know, be wasting time. But if you stop, you take a rest, and you're able to refocus, recharge, and then you can go back even stronger. You know, it can create more benefits in the long
agree with
run.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I forget about rest most of the time.
I think I need to Google that, like I had to Google sleep, because I don't know. Let me Google rest. Because as a working mother of three, I don't think I understand what that word is. And I may have to Google that word as well. So you might have to give me some time to Google rest.
But it's very important.
It's definitely very important. And I know the importance of it. You know, it's just in this time, I think we lose the importance of things like recharging, rejuvenating, you know, especially when there's so much sanctions on what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. But we need to be able to find those things that are, I mean, like you said before, we've now all become doubles maker, roti maker, calori maker, things that we never even thought that we would try before the pandemic, that we're trying all of these new things. And I'm sure the athletes are now doing a lot more research and finding ways of things that they didn't think before. Is there a concept online that exists to train online cricket? You know, we see some questions coming through in the Q&A, and we assure you that whatever is not answered here, we will try to reach out to the panelists separately and ask them offline and answer them, so that we can make sure that everybody that has a question is answered, whether it's here or offline.
Being able to be fearless. You know, you're in this situation, you don't know what the future holds. You just really need to take the bull by its horns and just go for it. Whatever you can research, whatever comes to mind, what people may be recommending, as Dr. Mohammed was talking about, you know, reach out to your friends. As we were talking about to Ms. King, you know, make sure that you connect with the young ones. I think it's being fearless and saying to yourself, I am not going to let this pandemic crush me. We need to make a change. We need to transform ourselves and the way we do things. And let's look at another question that Nadine, I think, has mentioned, has asked. Any recommendations for dealing with quarantine fatigue, particularly regarding low energy and motivation? And I think we touched on it in a few ways, in a few different ways, you know, looking at how you energize yourself, focusing on eating well and making sure that you have, you maintain good wellness. But any of the panelists, do you want to take that question?
Actually, I was thinking I can probably contribute in a small way. I think that, you know, going back to when I mentioned what made me launch my business at this point in time, being the fact that people are not dealing well with the isolation that they're being faced with, right? A big part of that, why people are becoming so depressed and anxiety is rising, is because of that fatigue of being alone, being at home. You know, COVID-19, you can't go out, and being stuck indoors all the time, it can really bring about a sense of fatigue and, you know, lack of motivation to just get up and do anything. And I think that's where I think it was Dr. Mohammed said, reaching out to friends, right? Communicating, reaching out to someone who, because everyone is dealing with the same thing right across the globe, right? So, you know, just reaching out to someone and talking to them, maybe having, like she said, you know, a party, right? You have to be innovative and creative and find ways to deal with the situation, because we all understand now that it's not something that's going away. And we have to find ways to cope. We have to work together to do that. So, Stacey mentioned that she is very self-motivated. Not everyone, as she correctly said, not everyone is self-motivated. Some of us depend on, you know, being in a team or leaning on another person to do so. So don't be afraid to reach out. As we mentioned, that I would also like to mention something that I have started a few months ago. It's called Coffee Chat. So this is a forum where I provide emotional support for individuals who may need it, who have been struggling with COVID-19 and, you know, the pandemic fatigue, as Dr. Mohammed just said here. It's something that we need to support one another, and we need to find new and creative ways to motivate ourselves, whether it's going on YouTube and finding a workout program that you can do from at home. It may not be as exciting as the gym. This is something that I'm struggling with myself. But finding a new way to go about it is very, very important, and it can really help a lot.
Thank you for that answer, Priyanka. And I think we thank the first panelists for their openness, for their contributions, for their answering of the questions. I think the same sentiments is coming across in, like Giselle said, in things that we need to do, that take care of ourselves, wellness, leverage our power, leverage what, like Dr. Mohammed said, leverage what you think your superpower is to help us get through this time, and build on it. And like Ms. Pascal said, take time to focus in and focus on your goals. What the pandemic has allowed us to do is slow down and focus on what it is you really want to do going forward. And it may be opening your own business, it may be doing different things, training in a different way, but really hone in on your skills and focus on what the future holds. So at this time, I think we're going to wrap up panel 1. Continue to ask your questions, like I said, even if it refers to panel 1 and specific questions to the first set of panelists, we will continue to answer them offline. But at this time, I will turn over to Giselle, and she will do the introductions for the second set of panelists.
So our second set of panelists are very, very influential women in their own right, and they have a lot to tell us today. So stay tuned. Please make sure that you're at the edge of your computer. We're looking at boosting productivity, taking risks, and finding the financial support to thrive in the new, challenging normal. That's going to be the focus of the discussion. Can mentoring assist during this time? So they'll be looking at some of those things. Let me introduce you to the panel. We start with Jimena Saldana. She's a trained media personnel, both in written, press, and radio and television, and her experiences include media management and operation. Considered one of the most influential women in the world's Olympic movement. She's the first woman to be named vice president of the Mexican Olympic Committee, member of the Executive Council for Americas of the Association of National Olympic Committees, and is a member of the Public Affairs and Social Development through Sport Commission of the International Olympic Committee, vice president of the Central American and Caribbean Sports Organization as well. And she also served as Secretary General of the Pan American Sports Organization. Throughout her professional career, she has promoted gender equality in various national and international forums in which she participates, as well as the promotion and dissemination of sport, particularly among young people. So that is Jimena Saldana. And our second panelist is Nicole Kuvritz. She has worked almost 30 years of experience in government and is a servant of the public, basically. She is the Senior Legal Policy Advisor at the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Government of Aruba. Nicole competed as an athlete in synchronized swimming at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games, and presently holds several leading positions in the Olympic movement, both in Aruba and in the international level. She's a member of the International Olympic Committee since 2006 and elected in 2017 as a member of the organization's executive board. She's a chair of the IOC Coordination Commission for the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games. And she's a vice chair of the IOC Coordination Commission of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. It's a very exciting time for her. At the continental level, Nicole was the first woman at the executive committee of the Pan American Sports Organization, and in Pan Sports, she also oversees the protocol portfolio as being the organization's chancellor. So we could have very exciting things coming there from Nicole very soon. And our final panelist is Senator the Honorable Laurel Lizama-Lising. She's a consultant on population and development with specific focus on women. So again, another powerful panelist to have with us. She also operates within Triniscene.com, a multimedia company. She's currently serving a second term as a government senator in the 12th Republican Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, having previously served during the 9th Parliament from 2007 to 2010. She's passionate about the advocacy, philanthropy in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly as it pertains to children's and women's affairs. And she's a council member of the Girl Guides Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the Public Relations Officer for the People's National Movement. She has in the past held directorships in several youth as well as community and women's-based organizations. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, a very powerful panel. And we start with Jimena Saldana. Welcome.
Thank you so much to all of you. I'm very happy to be with you this morning. It's a real privilege to be able to share with these participants in this forum. I believe a lot in the power of women, but also the power of sports, and especially in these times. I'll tell you just briefly about me. I'm already 53 years old. I'm a mother of two, and I have been involved for more than 30 years in the sports leadership. Although I love sports, I was never such a sharp athlete. So I moved to this part of sports leadership, which I consider a big tool to be able to help and really change lives of the athletes. I believe that the sports leadership really has only one meaning, which is to take the good care of our athletes for their well-being so that they can really do their utmost out there in the playing field. I have certain life premises which I believe that apply not only to my personal life, but also to life in sports, which is mainly never to take things personally. I think that we women sometimes do, you know, everything that happens, we try to dive in and understand what's really happening and take things much on a personal basis. And I believe that in sports, you have to take away all of those feelings and be able to push away politics from your real goals. I believe that you really always in your life have to fight for those things that you really believe in. And always I have felt that one of the premises that I would like to share is that you always have to believe in your inner voice, you know, your instincts. I believe we women share all these sometimes when you feel something inside of you and you say, this is the way I have to do it, and even though it doesn't look really as a good way, you have to believe in yourself. I never forget that the center of my life is here at home with my kids and my husband. I think I found a good partner of my life to be able to be sharing and supporting all of my goals. And I believe that every time I hear, like I did today with these panelists, when you really find your strength in your family, your children, the people around you, I think that is sometimes where you rest, as you said before, and you get your force to go back again and do what you need to do to feel better and to change lives. I believe that this is a real tool. Sports has always been a generator of beneficial life, of well-being, and I appreciate to hear these inspiring stories. I have to tell you that one of my favorite leaders in the Olympic movements when it comes to women is Nicole, who I'm sure you will enjoy very much hearing about her life and about her stories and about things we share and love about Olympism. But always I have to tell you, I feel a little jealous about you having Brian Lewis around. I believe he's a really good promoter of women's sport. Every time I listen to his words, every time I read what he writes, I find this strength, you know, I find this way to keep on doing things and to keep on fighting for the things I believe in. When I heard about this forum for the first time and I heard the name was Embracing Change, I could never feel related to a phrase like that. I always, now that unfortunately Ruth Bader passed away soon, she said something about change, and she said real change and enduring change happens one step at a time. So I believe we have to do that. This is a real hard time for us in the Olympic sports as well as in the whole planet. And when you find that you're going through some things that we share with all of you, we really have to embrace change. We really have to take time, as a doctor Mohammed said, to breathe in things and say, we are happy grateful for what we have, but we have to keep on striving. And not to get away from what our theme is, our subject this morning. I believe this pandemic has brought along some terrible things to all of us, but as well, we need to find things that can be something of benefit to all of us. And one of those things, actually, I believe, is the power of sports and the power of the Olympic Games of Tokyo next year. You're asking about the productivity and how we are going to find financial support. And I believe that this pandemic will bring back to the Games in Tokyo next year something very special, which is going back to the basic principles and ideals of the Olympic movement. I believe that we got a lot of change in time, and I think that this is a good time for sports, and this is a good time to embrace the principles and ideas of the Olympic movement.
Great.
Thank you for that powerful introduction.
I think it's important for us to remember one little thing that you said there initially. Find strength in our family to be able to motivate us and keep us strong and focused. And that's important. And many times we get involved in so many different things and we forget about our family, how important they are to be able to push us and motivate us. Those of us who don't have that opportunity to have family to motivate us, that is another issue. And that's where we come together as peers, as women in a strong solidarity to be able to help and support each other. So we have to also remember that. And I like your quote from Ruth Ginsburg, saying that real change happens one step at a time. Sometimes we want things to be rushed, we want things to happen now. And many times that's not possible. And so to remember those words, we need to focus on those words, I should say. You know, it really takes time, one step at a time.
Definitely.
Change, right? So let's now welcome Nicole Huvritz to give us her story and to give us some more insight.
Hi, thank you very much, Nadine and Giselle. I hope that you can all hear me.
Great.
Okay, very good. At the beginning of this seminar on advancing women in leadership positions, I would like to share a specific number with you. The World Economic Forum, in its annual report on gender equality, states a very important message, and it says that it is going to take us 217 years for us to finally reach parity at the world level. And when I heard that and when I read that, I was really a little bit worried and very frustrated, because I said, you know, I have a lot of time, I have a lot of patience, and I know that it's going to take us one step at a time, but 217 years, that's really too long. I want to say hello to everybody and introduce myself. It was already mentioned, some of my things that I've done in my life that I've been privileged to do. And I'm very, very happy to be with you this morning here at this seminar organized by the TTOC. And it's a very dynamic leader, Brian Lewis, who is really a champion for women. He is a he for she, as we like to call him. And he's a clear example of how an organization is really defined by the tone at the top. And in that sense, I'm very happy that we have a president who believes in the power of women and the power of women in sports. You are very privileged also to have a very dynamic Minister of Sports who we have met last year at a seminar that was organized by Pan Am Sports and by the USOC in Miami, and who is a clear example of believing in the power of women in sports and believing in the power of sports, just like Jimena just said. I thank and I really salute all the speakers and the panelists who are extraordinary women whose intervention I've really enjoyed, and I, of course, support the message that they have shared with us this morning. I would like to say that in a very brief intervention that I am allowed to do, because of time constraints, it will not take us too much to come to the point that at the Olympic movement, the IOC is really pushing the NOCs and the international federations, the national federations, to really take up this challenge and have more women in leadership positions. Women belong. That's the very important message that Professor Mohammed shared with us this morning. Women really belong at all levels where decisions are made. We are very proud and very happy that we have reached an almost 50% participation at the athlete level, but it's still where we have to move our focus is to get more women in leadership positions. We need more women at the decision-making tables. Personally, I have had the privilege to very often be the first woman in any position, and that makes you feel good, it makes you feel proud. But as Kamala Harris shared with us recently, It is not the fact that you are the first woman. You have to make sure that you are not the last woman in a position, so that when you reach the top and reach a certain position, that you make sure to send that elevator down, because we have to create opportunities for more women to reach that position. We have to create more opportunities for women. We have to make sure that women get to where we need them, which is at the decision-making levels. But we also have to make sure that we, through these advocacy seminars like we're doing this morning, we reach this, share this message with more women. But in addition to that, we have to make sure that women really make a transition from that position where they doubt and where they feel like, well, you know, I could do this. I think I can. I think I want to. Make that shift to, yes, I am ready for this. I am ready to take up a position. I'm ready to take up a position of leadership, of decision making. And that takes training, it takes coaching, it takes mentoring. So especially in this pandemic period, in this very challenging period, I urge you and I encourage all women to make use of the opportunity to follow these online seminars, to do a lot of personal training, do a lot of personal looking inward thinking. And I share all what has been said by my previous speakers and previous colleagues. I believe in that. That's what we have to do. At the Olympic movement, we have a cycle, an Olympic cycle, that makes that around the Olympic Games, which were postponed and are going to take place next year in Tokyo. Around the Olympic Games, the Olympic movement and its NOCs, its national federations, its international federations hold their elections. I encourage you, I call on all of you to take up this challenge, believe in yourselves, and put your name forward for a position when the elections come around. I believe absolutely in the power of women also in decision-making positions. And I hope that by next year, by the end of the cycle, of the electoral cycle, we can have more women in decision-making positions. That is what I believe my responsibility is, to encourage more women to take up these leadership positions. And whenever I can help in any way, I hope that you will reach out to me and I will reach out to you so that we can together reach this goal.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. That's very, very encouraging for us women generally, not just here in Trinidad and Tobago, but across the world, and all of those people living, actually viewing us now from different countries.
Very motivating, very inspiring. I almost feel like signing my nomination form now. Like, where do I sign?
I hope you do. I hope you do. And I hope that we won't have to wait 217 years to reach that.
I was just going to say that. That's a lot of time, and we really can't wait for that. And we are so happy, and we agree with you, Nicole, to have Brian. He for she. Very, very important to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're very honored to have that. So let's go on to our next panelist, Ms. Laurel Lizama Leasing. Welcome, Laurel.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our Honorable Minister, to our TTOC President, to our panelists, our moderators, and to all of you viewing here. Good morning, and thank you very much for having me here as a participant on this panel and on this very, very important and groundbreaking webinar, I would say. I think the topic this morning is fantastic. The ethos, rather, of the TTOC, which speaks to the future, is female. There is so much promise and so much life within that statement. And what is more significant for me is the fact that the president of the TTOC has made it his personal mission to breathe life into that ethos of the future is female. We listened to the minister, Honorable Shamfa Kujoo, and she said that women in leadership should be a distinctive feature of the new normal. And I think that is a pillar upon which we must build. And that is something that really ought to come out of these discussions. And as as the previous speaker said, Nicole, as she talked about, she was hoping more women would put themselves forward and make themselves available to accept positions on the International Olympic Committee and any other committee, whether it's in the sporting fraternity, the political arena, or any form of service and leadership that is needed. We also had our TTOC president, Brian Lewis, speak to the gender regressive practices and the systemic and structural inequalities with which we are plagued and what we face at these current times. What we have to realize is that this pandemic is in fact giving us the opportunity to challenge that, to shake it, to break it as women, and to take full advantage and show that we can do it just as well. We can most likely do it even better. What we have learned from this pandemic is that the majority of people who have been affected job-wise and within the home would be the women. Women have been the ones who have been more charged with taking care of children who have to stay home and learn. Some women have had to take a very, very difficult decision to leave the workplace in order to maintain familiar relationships, to take care of their children. The current circumstances do not allow for many people to have other people come in to support them, grandparents who belong to the vulnerable populations, or even housekeepers or helpers or aunties or grannies, because that is widespread exposure. And what we have found is that women have found themselves in a very challenging position of having to take care of their children, take care of their homes, try to work from home, try to maintain their leadership professional positions, try to survive. And so when we speak to what the topic of this panel specifically is, which is boosting productivity, taking risks, finding financial support, and even the subtopic of can mentoring assist during this time, we realize there's a lot of positive opportunity coming out of this pandemic. There are many negatives coming out of it, but this is a platform for opportunity. And we have to recognize that change is inevitable. It is not always easy to embrace. It is not always easy to achieve, but it's something that we have to accept gradually, eventually, purposefully, and it is something that we have to continue to work towards and not give up. So this pandemic really gives us, the advent of this very, very uncharted territory really is an opportunity for women and an opportunity for all of us to ensure that the women claim their space in the future, because the future is female. Women do belong. Women have to help other women. We must help other women, and we must, for our own mental preservation, build our own support networks, whether it's friends, professional colleagues, professional assistants. We must build those networks, and we must look out for one another. So I'm really looking forward to the discussions of this panel, and thank you very, very much. We have some really exciting people here, very experienced people, so thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, great. We're really excited about this as well. And so far, so good. I've been really learning a lot. It's been very motivating, and I'm sure to many people. In fact, there was a gentleman on the chat just now, Kevin Bethel, that said during this pandemic, the sleeping dragon has been awakened, and that being the woman. And I thought that was so good. When we were talking about superhumans, superpowers, maybe the dragon, maybe my superpower. But anyway, so that was very enlightening. Thank you, Laurel. I think it's important for us to understand that the opportunity is now for us to challenge ourselves, to go beyond and see what capabilities we have for change, for diversity, for transformation. And
I think what has come across in all the panelists so far, panel 1, panel 2, and even Dr. Mohammed, is the importance of solidarity with each other as women, as sports administrator, whatever niche you would like to place yourself into. It is about helping and uplifting. And I think what was amazing that Nicole said was that being the first is not what is important. It's making sure that you are not the last. Because I personally was the first. I was the first ever zonal chairman in the basketball commission, and I thought I was so proud. But it really struck me when she said that it's not being proud and being the first. It's making sure that you are not the only one, and sending that ladder down to make sure that there are 10 others after me, or every zone has a woman as the chairman, or the entire basketball federation now has a woman as the president. You know, it's important that we not only think that what we've done is important, but try to help and uplift everyone else.
That's why I thought it was very interesting for a young woman skating that she actually reaches out to the junior cricketers periodically. You know, and I think that was very, very good of you, Skink, to be able to do that. You know, and I think more young people who have the power now can do that more and more. And once we start doing that, then, you know, the world's our oyster.
I think we are.
Can I ask you that, Nadine? That is for me the most important thing. You know, when you're the first woman at something, it makes you feel good, but that lasts about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you realize how important your responsibility has become.
Definitely.
In order for you to send that elevator down so that more women can come up. And I believe instead of just focusing on the general advocacy role that we have as the Olympic movement, we now have to become more specific. I would like to see specific numbers. I would like to, for us all women in this panel, not to be a rarity, not to be something different. You know, we want to just be leaders. We just want to be leaders in the Olympic movement or in the sports movement, but not a woman. We are just the best qualified persons for a position. And in order to do that, I would like for us to be aware of the fact that we have to reach out to young women, but also to women that are already active in some kind of capacity in sport, and make them understand that you can do it. Help them, coach them, you know, and make sure that by the time they have this opportunity that they are, in fact, they dare do this and not be afraid. So I believe that is our role, and succession planning is something that I really believe in. I think that as a leader, you're only as successful as you are in preparing your next generation of leaders. We're not going to be here forever, and not because we are going to die, but because we're going to move on to different things. And we have to create an opportunity for a new generation of leaders.
And I think it's also so very important that we open athletes' eyes to the fact that sport does not end when you can no longer be an athlete. There are so many different opportunities, coaching, administration, you know, there's mentorship, there's so much that exists other than, you know, Ms. Aldana was talking about, you know, she realized that, you know, maybe competing wasn't her 100% thing, but she realized that administration was. And likewise, very early on, I realized I love basketball, but maybe I wasn't Olympic material. I would never make an Olympic Games as a basketball athlete, but I realized that sports administration was my thing. And, you know, we need to put it out there that, especially to our female athletes, that this competing is not where it ends. There are so many more avenues for you to succeed and for you to lead and for you to mentor other than just competing.
I think you had a question.
Yes, we do.
Some questions for the panelists that we'd like to see.
And this question is from Ms. Aldana. It says, you are considered one of the most influential women in the world's Olympic movement. How have you been able to embrace the transformation taking place in the Olympic world because of this pandemic? And what can be done to sustain the movement financially in the years ahead, given the new normal?
Okay, here's what I really believe about this. I have to say that COVID-19 is bringing a lot of changes, unfortunately, to societies and economies. And I believe the poverty and the damage being done to all of us is mostly has the face of women and children, unfortunately. And of course, sport is also a part of the society that's being affected. And sometimes when everything started, when the pandemic came along, if you really sat and thought that the athletes had already been preparing for most of their lives for the Olympic Games in Tokyo, and suddenly, just suddenly, they find out there were no games this year. So when I thought about this and I said, you know, what's going through their minds when you dedicate your life, you know, all of us involved in the Olympic movement, you understand that athletes have been working since children for a day like this, for an opportunity like this. And suddenly, because of something you have never heard of before, everything stopped. And that's when I thought, sports leaders have now the real opportunity to strive and do something real for the well-being and emotional support of their athletes. And I believe the International Olympic Committee and most of the continental organizations have seen this factor and have activated themselves very fast. That's why I believe that even Tokyo is bringing new opportunities to all of us. I have recently joined the now Central Sports, the Caribbean Association, as vice president, and I'm the leader of the marketing commission. And I thought this was a great opportunity for our region. And here's the reason. Next year, we will have the Tokyo Olympic Games. I'm very certain of that. I'm very certain that it will not be the games that we have visualized a year ago, but the games will go on and the games will be there. So just imagine the whole world suffered of this pandemic. We have suffered in our homes, in our society, in our countries, and the whole planet. And suddenly we'll be showcasing the best of the humanity, of mankind. We will have an Olympic festival. We have athletes there. The young people that will inspire our lives are going to be meeting there in a sports challenge and in the field. And we will be backing them up. We don't know if it'll be a whole of the spectators there, but we will surely be on our homes, on our TVs, cheering them up. And I believe this is, I can't imagine some country or some leader saying, we don't want our best athletes to be there. We all want to be there. And now that's why I was saying it's coming back to the Olympic principles. It's going to be a real festival of sports and youth. So I can't imagine, companies or governments not being interested in investing in in the performance of their athletes, in the well-being of the athletes there. And I believe this is a great opportunity for marketing for the sports organizations. We want to have our athletes there doing their best. So companies are going to be seeing this. Sports has always been a way to understand even your nationality. I don't know if all of you have ever thought when you first felt as a citizen of your own country. And I can remember that I felt it on a soccer match, and you understand, oh, I'm from that team, I'm from Mexico. So I believe that's where you really understand your own nationality, and you say, well, I'm from this team. And this is going to happen real big next year in Tokyo. We will all be behind our athletes. So I can't imagine we as a sports leader, we cannot miss this opportunity to put in all the political agendas of our countries, sports as one of the main things that you have to focus on. And I cannot believe we all do not want to take part in these games. I think the games will be the great moment of the world again, to breathe and say, we're here, we're celebrating, we're all together, we made it, and we are stronger. So I really believe that this is a great opportunity for sports organizations to go out there and get the funds and the resources we need to make our organizations stronger and to make our athletes perform better.
Yes, I agree. That makes absolute sense. And I think, Emilia, you're actually talking about all the things that we're talking about today. You're talking about fearlessness, being, driven, knowing that we have to take risks, all of that is in preparation to Tokyo. And if we think of the fearlessness, if we think of the productivity and the innovation and all of that event will definitely be a good one and will come off well. And whether there are audiences in there or not, there will be audiences worldwide, whether it's on television, virally, So something is going to come off.
I know that I've never personally been to an Olympic Games, but there's no feeling like seeing my flag raised and hearing my national anthem. I stand at attention home in my house when Keyshawn Walcott won gold, and I stood up like I was in the stands. There's no feeling like that in the world. So I think what the pandemic has also challenged us to do is think outside the box. This box is what we do for fundraising, this box is what we do for marketing, but what can we do outside this box? What exists out there? Usually in terms of supporting our athletes or supporting our IOCs, we have a template and we have, okay, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. But now, here we come, we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we can't do this. So let's regroup and think about what we can do. So it's challenged all of us to think outside of what, we keep throwing around the word the new normal, but the new normal is not just wearing a face mask or washing your hands or social distancing. The new normal is your way of thinking. That is the new normal. It's think outside of what you normally would think of.
And talking about that, I actually have a question from somebody from our audience, and I'll address it to you, Nicole, actually. It says, what strategies do you suggest to deal with imposter syndrome, feeling that you may not deserve to be sitting at the table full of men? What's your take on that, Nicole?
I don't recognize that feeling. I've never felt, that I didn't belong to sit at the table. I thought, we always belong. And in fact, maybe that is something that we have to get used to. We are human beings. We are women. We are very capable, intelligent people, and we deserve to sit at that table. So it's not so, I've never felt that I didn't belong at that table. So yes, of course, we need more women at the table, but not because we don't belong at the table. We do belong. We really are entitled to that. I wanted to come back to one thing, because we're talking about, adapting to this new normal. And just yesterday, I took part in the meeting of the Coordination Commission for the Olympic Games of Tokyo. And if you're talking about adaptability, then this is a school book example of adaptability and creativity and just, changing and challenging everything. The Olympic Games from Tokyo, as the President Bach likes to call it, these are going to be games that are fit for the post-COVID world. These are not going to be the regular Olympic Games. We have gone through many, many exercises of taking measures to make them simpler, to make them more economically sound, because the world expects that from us. Not lavish big games, but games that are really fit for the post-COVID world. And that is not just for the games in Tokyo, because it's also applicable to our own continent and our own region. Jimena is part of well, I have to remember the new name of our organization, Jimena. It used to be CACSO, the Central American and Caribbean Sports Organization. Now it's called Central Caribe Sports. So that's a new name of this organization. And we're all adapting our own games to this new reality. Next year, we're going to have the first edition of the Junior Pan American Games. These are also going to be more simple and more economic, sound games. That's the message that we're all taking away from this. Think outside the box, be creative, do things differently, not because we have done something always in the same way that is what we have to do forever. The reality is going to be very different than what we are used to. The going back to business as usual, that's absolutely off the table. That is not going to happen anymore. I don't believe in a new normal. I believe in a new reality. The new reality in sports and sports organization is going to be totally different than what we are used to doing up to now. And that is something that we have to challenge ourselves as sports leaders to make sure that we move, be creative, think differently, think outside that normal box.
I think that you're my kindred spirit when you say that Mr. Lewis is standing computer looking at me and he's shaking, because I think you're my kindred spirit, because I don't have those feelings that I don't belong at a table. If I felt that way, I would pick up my table and go home and say, you know what, it's you that doesn't belong, not me. And I look at things generally that we're saying about women, and it's not necessarily about being women, it's about being equal. When you look at my resume looks exactly like yours. So I don't belong here because more women should be included. I belong here because I'm just as qualified and I deserve the opportunity just as much as anybody else, and not because there should be more inclusion for women. At this time, I think I have a question for Mrs. Lisa, and do you think that women have been more affected by the pandemic by men, and why?
Thank you very much for that question. But before I go to the question, can I just touch on something that you just said?
Sure, of course.
With the woman, where when you're talking about your CV looks the same as perhaps, just for reference, let's say Mr. Lewis's, him being the known male in this discussion at this point in time.
My CV does not look the same as his badge, just by me, but okay.
But no, but the reality is that very often women are intimidated. Women are very much intimidated and are afraid to take up the mantle of leadership. And something Nicole talked about, I think she said, where who are you going to pull up the elevator? And it ties into the concept of mentorship, which is a part of the co-theme in this panel discussion as well. And I think it's really very, very important for us to keep in mind a few things. One, this is a new generation of leaders, and I think a number of young women coming up are pretty bold and emboldened, and they feel empowered. But very often, and I'm very sorry to say this, we have seen where women have not turned around to help these young women to pull them up, and that can be a challenge. And so I challenge the women here and the women of the TTOC and the women of the International Olympic Committee to ensure that they do not actually practice that sort of, or engage in that sort of practice. And it's important for us to let the younger women know that even if you don't think that you belong, or even if you don't think that you're capable of doing what may be necessary, just jump in head first, really. And you're going to learn on the way up, and there will be people who will come and help you. There will be people. You have the Nicoles and the Jimenas who are guaranteed to turn around and help you and to extend a hand of friendship, of leadership, and of support. And really and truly, it's to encourage you, as you were speaking to Nadine, that you didn't think you'd be an Olympic basketballer, but you found out that you're a good administrator. Bloom where you are planted. If you find that you're functioning well, you really just try your very best to do your best within that portfolio. We all agree that sports and music would be the two universal languages and unifiers. And this sport, the opportunity for Olympics to happen in Japan next year, and the opportunity of using sport as a tool for development and for leadership is something that we should not really take lightly, and it's something that we need to maximize, absolutely. And now I want to go to the question of, do you think women are more affected than men? If I answer you off the cuff, I will say yes. Off the cuff, I will say yes. And I revert to the thought that the women are the ones who are being more challenged to stay at home, to take care of children. The women are the ones who are thought to be more dispensable than the men. That's just because of the way society is built in many, many circumstances. Not in all, in many circumstances. But that is not to say that men are not actually being adversely affected by the pandemic. You know, some men have also lost their jobs. There's a minimization of income, work opportunity, men who have their own businesses, perhaps contractors, things like that, where industries have slowed down. But you will find from statistics from the UN Women, from their website, statistics show that it's women. 41% of women, I believe, are the ones who have been adversely affected employment-wise, whereas it's 31% for men. So if you're looking from a statistical point of view, the world over, it shows that women have been the one who are more affected because of new demands within this new reality, not the new normal, as Nicole said, within our new reality, within this COVID world that we live in. So I do think that women are in fact a little more adversely affected because we maintain these traditional roles for women. And while that's all well and good, tradition is not going to take us through this pandemic.
True.
Quite frankly.
Very, very true. Very, very true. So as we're talking about that, somebody sent us a question here saying, what do you think is the role of men in ending the gender gap?
And the question is being asked directly to Ms. Saldana, and I recognize the name asking the question, and that is because she is a pioneer, being one of She's actually a sports reporter, and being one of very few female sports journalists that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, and she's the one asking this question directly to Ms. Saldana.
Thank you. I truly believe men have a big role to play in giving women these new opportunities. And why am I saying this sounding a little bit macho style? Because when I became first involved in the Olympic sports, and the whole movement was mostly handled by men, and we really couldn't find women around us in the meeting rooms and everywhere we were. You know, women were there probably playing a role behind scenes. And I was actually working at that time with one of the sports leaders of our continent, Mario Vázquez Raña, and he was never considered as a man aware of the power. However, he was indeed inside of himself. He truly believed in women, and he opened up opportunities for women around the Olympic movement. But one of the things that I consider was one of the real things, you know, back then at the beginning, about 20, 30 years ago, they started speaking about women's sports and women's sports commissions, and it was only talk and talk and talk, and maybe a few numbers would appear there, but you didn't see something real behind these words. And suddenly, in the Association of National Olympic Committees, they said, well, you know, in the meeting rooms where we meet the whole assembly, that means 205, 206 National Olympic Committees, and barely you could see women around you. We started working along with Gunilla Lindberg, who was the TTOC Secretary General, and we thought we could ask the continents to send 5 women along to the assemblies. You know, they didn't have to play a special role or have a special position, but being involved in the Olympic movement in their countries. And so suddenly we found these 25 women around us who were there participating, hearing for you know, real assemblies, what was going on, what decisions were being taken. And I think this was a very good way to open up to new opportunities, because sports leaders would then realize, you know, the women that are here with us have something to say, have something to do, have new ideas. You know, this is something I thought it was a very good experience back then. I'm talking about many years ago, but this is something that a man did, you know, because he had the power to generate this. So I believe that really men have this power in the Olympic sports to open up. But now we're there. And I truly believe in sending down the elevator. I believe that women, yeah, as you have all said, we feel satisfied when you're there. And I was the first Secretary General women of a continental association. And this was indeed a big privilege. And I felt very happy to do that. But I never saw this as a role for women. I saw this as a role that you work for and something that you devote your life to. And suddenly you understand that yes, you have to open up another doors. And there you find interesting and inspiring stories, as I said about Brian Lewis. And I'm not just saying this because he might be hearing us. I'm saying this because I really believe when I sometimes, you know, life hasn't been good, or sometimes the Olympic movement is something, you know, a kind of heavy in your shoulders, and you listen to his words and you think, yeah, I have to be here. I have to work, and because I believe in this, you know. And he's very inspiring, and he's been doing actions that are opening up doors for women. So I do believe they have a role to play, but I do believe that it's mostly now in the hands of us women to keep on working for this. It's sending the elevator down, but it's, as we just heard Nicole, it's inspiring. It's something that suddenly you say, well, yes, maybe I'm capable of running for this position, you know. And because you always think of someone better, because we have this fear, and it happens to me a lot. But then I listen to these leaders and I say, well, I have to try, you know, at least I have to try and run for it. Mm-hmm. So I do believe they have a role to play. It's a very important thing. But I also believe we women have to keep on pushing for these ideas to come along and become a reality.
Absolutely. You're very, very right. And I hope, Rachel King, that she answered your question eloquently. I would like to, though, end this session, this panel discussion, with one question to Nicole. And what are your hopes for the future of the young athletes after this pandemic is over?
Or maybe just what are your hopes for the future?
Oh, I have many hopes. I am a very positive and optimistic person by nature. I'm a highly self-motivating person, but I believe that through sports, absolutely we can create a better world. And I hope that the young people feel inspired by all these wonderful people and wonderful examples that the world of sports offers them. I would like to, before I go back, just one very specific item that I think that everybody needs to know. We have been working very much from home, and that is in many senses something very positive. It has made us focus more on family and made us focus more on our mental health and our psychology and everything that goes around with that. But we have to realize, and this is something very sad, that the home, not for everybody, is a safe place. Abuse and violence against, in particular, women is very prevalent. And when we talked about the stress that this being at home presents for many people, we have to realize that we have to be protective of everybody in their home situations, women and children very often. So this is something that I really want to make a point about, because everybody thinks that being at home is always a very positive thing, not for everybody. But going back to being hopeful for the future, yes, I am very hopeful for the future. I am hopeful because we have leaders at the top like Brian Lewis, like your Minister of Sport, like President Bach, like at the continental level, Neven Illich, who really push and empower women to take up these positions of responsibility. I am also hopeful because I'm convinced, because I'm very closely involved in my National Olympic Committee, but also at the International Olympic Committee, that the Games of Tokyo are going to be a beacon of hope for all the sports organizations, for the NOCs, and in particular, and that's what we're doing it for the athletes. Jimena mentioned, just imagine you being an athlete and having prepared for so many years to go to the Olympic Games in Tokyo and make your dream come true. And this suddenly, out of the blue, there comes this crisis, this pandemic, this something that you have never even thought of, and really mixes up all your dreams and your plans. We are working very hard to make the Tokyo Games a reality. I'm convinced that they will become a reality, and that there will be the light at the end of the tunnel. So I thank all of you for offering us this opportunity this morning to share all our thoughts and our ideas with this wonderful group of people. A few hundred people are logged in and are part of this event. And I thank everybody who has made this possible and has organized this wonderful forum.
Thank you, Nicole. And thank you also for touching on that bit of violence, because that was one of the questions that we had coming up here. And just remember that any questions you put in the Q&A that have not been answered, they will be answered eventually. Someone from here will get back to you. Just to wrap up a little bit, I just want to bring out some points that were touched. We looked at the positive elements coming out of the pandemic that we could look at. We looked at the fact that change is inevitable no matter what, and we just have to embrace it and really work together to make change happen and to our benefit. We talked about the analogy, and I love that analogy about sending up the elevator and supporting each other and making sure that we pull each other up, especially as women, and especially in leadership in particular. And we talked about unleashing, our superpower, being able to get that grit and to be able to be fortuitous and resilient and to be able to be innovative as well, all at the same time, So I think we touched on so many wonderful things. I think the panels were well put together. I think the topics that we covered many things. We looked at leveraging power. We looked at being fearless, and we looked at innovation during this pandemic. We talked about productivity, taking risks, all of those sorts of things. And I think it was a huge amount of topics that we looked at that I think will benefit everybody who is out there. So I thank you very much.
So we just want to very briefly, if any of the panelists from panel 1 or panel 2, if there was anything that you feel that we missed in the questions, or if there was anything that you particularly wanted to address very quickly, because we just have a couple of minutes, if there's anything that any of the panelists across the board just wanted to add very briefly, we just give you that opportunity now for just a couple minutes.
No, if I was just waiting to see if somebody wanted to go first. I just hope that we can really believe in the power of women, the power of sports. And my mantra has always been, she believed she could, so she did.
Very lovely mantra. It's something to take on board.
I think we're going to pin it up around here.
My personal mantra has always been, people only treat you how you allow them to treat you. Has always been my personal mantra in life, and I apply it across the board, whether it's your children, your husband, your boss, anybody. People only treat you how you allow them to treat you. And if we allow, we need to allow, have people treat us how we feel we need to be treated, whatever the spectrum is. Anybody else?
One thing I'd like to add, you know, I think a lot of us get caught up in planning. You know, we focus a lot on planning. I think we need to step back on the planning a bit and start to execute. And you know what, you're gonna get perfection along the way, but it never happens first, and it's okay. If we all start to do more as women, we'll be recognized that we will start to blaze even more powerful and remarkable trail than we currently are. Don't let fear stop you. Just go for it.
Yeah, and of course, definitely take risks, because you will not achieve anything if you don't take any risk.
You know, having said that, coming from a working background in advertising, we have a saying, it's better to be 80% correct and moving than 100% correct and standing still. So, you know, that's the thing we operate on, and then, like you were saying, planning, and then we get to the planning stage and then we never get to the executing stage. So it's better to, you know, keep moving.
Yeah.
So just anybody else real quickly?
I'd just like to say, because it was said earlier on, and I think that it's a mantra to just move forward with, that we as women, we belong, and we should just continue the challenge she set us to.
I think that's an opportune moment for us to stop now and
Just
introduce.
A quick thing. When you mentioned that there was this journalist talking about it, I just want to say something that I heard Nicole say a few days ago, which I thought was really important, that we understand that the sports journalists really have to encourage and motivate women athletes. So it's good to know that you're connected to the webinar and to this forum, and to understand that we also need to promote that, to have more women in sports journalism and more women supporting female athletes.
Yes, that's true. And I know you're a journalist as well, so you will identify with that fully. So thanks for that. So without further ado, I think we now would like to call on Diane Henderson, the chair of Advancing Women in Leadership, to give the vote of that.
Wow, what exciting and informative discussions and conversation. I was blown away here, so I know that the chat is blown away. I thought I was writing and underlining and highlighting that I thought, you know, really came out, you know. I know, Giselle, you did all the rounds, but I can't forget prioritize your well-being and wellness, you know, that's so important. And then a mindset for being uncomfortable. We sometimes in our comfort zone, sharpening our minds. One that resonated with me is get yourself an accountability partner, because we can't do it alone. And that identifies with solidarity and the mentoring, you know, and the lift and everything else that was said there. One of the things is continue to do your personal training, you know, they encourage women to take up the leadership positions. And also, like, through this whole thing about executing, is develop that team to springboard your idea, you know, just the same thing, and all of it sort of aligns going forward. And then Nicole, just as she spoke about Tokyo, she mentioned acceptance, that adaptability. And I just thought, you know, in this new reality, and that's a term now, we're not going to say new normal anymore, we're going to say the new reality, you know, hashtag it. It happened here, the Advancing Leadership Forum, Advancing Women's Leadership Forum. But acceptance and how much things are going to change going forward. You know, I wrote that down because we ourselves have to accept the change that is happening in order for us to change. We have to accept it. You know, just a quick thing. Before we came on this morning, I was watching the powerboat race, our great race, and I was so dissatisfied with the negative comments that some of these people were making at the commentators who were doing their best to keep them entertained while there were difficulties with the the video coverage of the booths. Everybody wanted to see the booths, but it's a new dynamic, and everybody has to be able to accept the change. And as we said, execute. It may not be perfect the first time, but they'll get it right. You know what I mean? So we need to do the same. So really and truly, I just want to thank everyone now, starting with the Minister of Sport and Community Development, Shamfa Jo, for giving us her time, President Brian Lewis of the Olympic Committee and Commonwealth Games Association. I'll start with Nicole, panelists, Nicole, Laurel, and Jimena, as well as Melissa, Stacy, and Priyanka. Oh gosh, thank you so much, as well as Dr. Safia Mohammed. Can't forget you at all for that dynamic presentation. All of you contributed so much. And our moderators, you know, we couldn't do it without you. You also gave points that impacted all the discussions that were held, right? So thank you, Lovey and Lauren in the background, for making sure the technology worked today. It worked fantastic. and if not for being there and always supporting in the background, our Secretary General and all the people I'm seeing on the chat. I was so excited. I'm still going to be writing notes when I'm finished. So everybody, I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. Thank you for tuning in, and see you at the next one.